We have breaking news as an NHL insider has revealed that a massive New York Rangers trade is imminent, with Chris Kreider being traded to the Anaheim Ducks. And this has major implications on the team because this opens the floodgates for everything Chris Drury is planning to do with this roster this offseason. There's a lot of moving parts, and we're going to break it all down in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 74% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening with the New York Rangers, and it is about to get very busy, let me tell you that, hit that free subscribe button down below, and this is the place to be for all your daily New York Rangers content. But Bret, lots to get into today. It's going to be a late one, a late upload. But Chris Kreider, it looks like he is on his way out of New York. This just dropped from Frank Seravalli a few minutes ago at the time of this recording that the Rangers and the Ducks are in advanced discussions on a trade that would see Chris Kreider moved to Anaheim, which I think the Ducks are now becoming the graveyard for Chris Drury at this point. So we'll get into that as well. But in terms of some more details, and we have some more details from Vince Mercogliano as well, which I think is super interesting. But I want your thoughts on this first. There's no deal at this moment, but there is interest, and they have a framework. They have been working on it, but both teams had their hands in the cookie jar today, according to Frank Seravalli, with something else. I think that's pretty interesting. We'll get into Jason Robertson in a second as well. But we'll see on Wednesday. So tomorrow, right? Chris Kreider could not be a New York Ranger tomorrow. What are your initial thoughts on this? Because I did not expect this soon.
Well, this is a bittersweet moment for sure. I mean, Chris Kreider has been with the team for 14 seasons, assistant captain since the 2017-2018 season. So like I said, it's a bittersweet moment. No deal is finalized yet, but Chris Drury's intentions here are definitely set in stone. And all Rangers fans know what Chris Drury wants to do now. He's made his intentions clear. It started with the Jacob Trouba trade, getting rid of Barclay Goodrow. I mean, he wants a total overhaul of what the Rangers have looked like the past few seasons. And it's just really crazy because, we put out two videos today talking about the rumors.
Yeah.
Jason Robertson, JJ Peterka, Keandre Miller, Alexi Lafreniere, and the rumors just keep coming. The rumors are rolling, and it really feels to me that there is no team in the NHL that's been involved in more rumors than our very own New York Rangers.
And I think there's good reason for that because I don't think people from the outside looking in realize how crazy Chris Drury is. Like, he will do anything to get guys that he believes in. And, JT Miller is a great example of that this past season. But as I mentioned, we have some more insight into what this trade is going to look like from Vince Mercogliano. And he said that he's hearing the same as Frank Seravalli. He doesn't want to put any names out there without confirmation. But the framework basically looks like a prospect and a pick for Chris Kreider and his full contract. No retained salary. This would be, in my eyes, a masterclass by Chris Drury because then you can either use that prospect or you can flip those assets to go out and get another left shot defenseman, which we think is the plan. Maybe it's through free agency. There's a lot going on right now. You also need the salary cap space. We're going to talk about Jason Robertson as well. It would be nice, but you need the salary cap space to sign, Matt Rempe still. Obviously, Will Cooley. There's a couple guys you still need to sign. We have no idea what's happening with Keandre Miller at this point too, right? So there's a lot of moving parts. And one guy that, I don't know if he's necessarily a prospect, but Olin Zellweger from the Anaheim Ducks, he would interest me. They have Connor Smith as well. I guess he could be classified as a prospect as well. He's a big defenseman, left shot defenseman. So that could be interesting. But Bret, I don't want to put you on the spot here too much, but do you think the Rangers, because I feel like they maybe need to get a little bit older with some more experience on the left side rather than bringing in like a prospect or a guy who's, just played his first year in the league. But, this could be something in Zellweger that could make some sense, I think, in this way to kind of, add another piece to the left side, and then you get a bunch of salary cap space that you can go out and make some other moves.
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, the cap space situation, that is the main priority for me. I definitely want to clear that cap space out. As you mentioned, we still have some free agents of our own to re-sign, and they may not be the big flashy names, but they are names that the Rangers need to keep. For instance, Matt Rempe, like you just alluded to a second ago, because the Rangers need to get tougher and they need to play with more snarl, as we've talked about in the past few videos. But you talk about the Anaheim Ducks prospect there, and I could imagine that the Rangers aren't going to be getting back a Leo Carlsson or a Trevor Zegras, a player like that of that caliber in return. But the biggest thing for me, like I said, is clearing that cap space because this is an important offseason. But as I've kept mentioning in my prior videos, I'm all locked in on next offseason. But the Rangers definitely have to develop a culture. They definitely have to play some winning hockey this season because talking about the upcoming free agent class is great, but the Rangers have to present something to the table in order to be an attractive destination for those big free agents. So you mentioned getting some experience on that left side. Obviously, losing Keandre Miller would be tough because he is a lefty defenseman and he played some time. He had some time on the ice with Adam Fox this past season. But if I'm the Rangers, I'm really looking into Braden Schneider. He's a name that we haven't talked about much this offseason, but I've heard Rangers mentioning his name a lot as of late, as we've talked about Will Cooley, as we've talked about Alexei Lafreniere. Braden Schneider's name is starting to come up, and I know that he plays on the right side, but he's still under contract for one more season at just $2.2 million AAV. So I would really like to experiment with a guy like Braden Schneider on that first line with Adam Fox on the left side, because I think he is a perfect complement for Adam Fox, because unlike Keandre Miller, who I respect and has had some good moments here as a Ranger, like we were speaking about today in the chat, sometimes he just looks like a traffic cone out there, and that's not going to cut it for the Rangers, and it's not going to cut it for the type of pay raise that he's looking for at possibly $7 million per season. It's just not going to work out for the Rangers, and they really shouldn't look or be interested in doing anything like that. But they should experiment, I believe, with a guy like Braden Schneider, because he is versatile and he has shown to play good, consistent hockey no matter where you throw him in that lineup. But it is going to be very interesting to see the prospect we get back in return, and who you just mentioned there would be great because he is young. He did have a good season, relatively good season. I mean, Anaheim is not exactly a great situation, but he's a relatively good player and hopefully could develop under our new head coach, Mike Sullivan.
Absolutely. And I think you bring up a good point, because there were reports at the end of the season that the Rangers do actually want to try Schneider on the left side. They would be open to it. So I feel like they might experiment with that, although things do change, and I can see him being included in a trade for Jason Robertson. I could absolutely see that, because the Dallas Stars need a right shot defenseman. Cody Ceci just signed in the KHL, and their defense is not great as it is. So I feel like where there's smoke, there's fire sometimes. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but freeing up this salary cap space, as you can see here, $6.5 million. You can do a lot with $14 million in cap space, especially with, I did mention Matt Rempe and Will Cooley. They're going to eat up quite a bit of that, but not all of it, right? So you're going to have some flexibility still, which I think is great. Again, if you look at just to bring it back to Chris Kreider for a second, what he means as a New York Ranger, this is going to be, I think, a sad day for fans, honestly, to kind of get over. Because he's been so great and obviously had a down year last year. I would attribute that to, obviously, he had multiple injuries, he had illnesses, all of that. So, I do think that he still has use, but he's a lot older now. I feel like the team's going in a different direction in terms of age. And again, last year, he just didn't have a good year. Like I just mentioned, it might be due to illness and injury, but they have to make some tough decisions. They're going in a different direction. They're getting younger. And I feel like, the Anaheim Ducks are getting a really good player. And I think the league is almost upside down right now, Bret. Like, I feel like they might be going out to get a guy like Chris Kreider because they might be interested in signing Mitch Marner, which is crazy, right? So I think they want to compete a little bit quicker than they were on track to. So things could get a little crazy. But any final thoughts on moving on from Chris Kreider? I think things are going to get really crazy tomorrow. I feel like as soon as Chris Drury has that cap space that he can work with, he's going to go a little crazy, because we know that once he fixates on something or one player specifically, he will do anything he can to get those guys.
Well, my final thoughts are on Chris Kreider is it still doesn't feel real yet because the deal isn't finalized, but it is a shame considering this past season he just had that he can't go out on a good note. He can't go out on the type of bang that he would like to, but I'll always remember the good moments. Obviously, the recent one against Carolina where he had that trick, and that really saved the series, and the Rangers were able to advance. But I am going to miss Chris Kreider, but you have to really be a forward-thinking organization, especially if you're the New York Rangers, and you need to just accept the fact that sometimes it's just time to move on. And like I mentioned before, Chris Kreider has been here a long time, longest tenured Ranger, and every time he comes back to Madison Square Garden, there's going to be cheers, unlike there were for David Quinn, who we spoke about a few videos ago when he came back to Madison Square Garden. But when Chris Kreider, he's always welcome in New York. He's always welcome back at the Garden. He'll retire a Ranger, but this is in the best interest of the New York Rangers organization. And Chris Drury is a cutthroat general manager. He isn't perfect, but he definitely sees the writing on the wall. and it's time to move on. And we saw that happen this past season. Like I mentioned before, Jacob Trouba, Barclay Goodrow, these guys are all leaders, and it's time to change the guard. And who knows, maybe a guy like Mika Zibanejad could be next, or Artemi Panarin coming off the books. I mean, we'll get into that in future videos. That's for another day, but the changing of the guard is happening right now. But I'll always have a lot of love and an appreciation for Chris Kreider. But now it's time to move on, and I'm sure a lot of Rangers fans feel the same way. And we're going to get into Jason Robertson. We're going to get into a lot of free agents, a lot of trade candidates, because now the Rangers all of a sudden went from $8.4 million to about $14.5 million. So things could really change quick, as you alluded to. And who knows what the Ducks are doing? They're unpredictable.
Yeah.
You know, on one hand, you could see them bringing in Chris Drury for like leadership qualities, and on the other, like you said, maybe they want to compete, bring in a Mitch Marner, and that could work. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But a lot of love for Chris Kreider for sure.
Absolutely, and I think that's well put. I think Chris Kreider, every time he comes back to MSG, will be greeted very nicely, right? Because he gave it all for this team. I did say that, last year it kind of looked like he quit on the team, but, it's okay to change your mind when, presented with new information, and he was hurt and, sick the entire year. So that does make sense. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here, what the actual return is, what Chris Drury is going to do after they make this trade, because it looks like it's imminent. It looks like it's going to happen. And it also seems like Chris Drury has his hand in a bunch of cookie jars, that's for sure. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. We are also going to be live tomorrow to break down a lot of what's happening. I'm sure we're going to end up breaking down the trade and, subsequent moves that they could move or use with that salary cap space. So it's going to be very interesting, but let us know what you think in the comments about Chris Kreider being traded. It looks like he's going to be an Anaheim Duck. The Ducks taking on more Rangers contracts. And like you said, it's going to be a tough day for Rangers fans, but probably a necessary move at this point. If you're not a proactive team, if you're a reactionary team and organization, you're going to be left behind. So I think the Rangers are trying to get on top of that and become competitive once again. But let us know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.